You stole my story. Here are 19 reasons to watch Secret Window. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Dave Musson at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is a place where I talk to you about all things Stephen King. I'm going to remove my John Shooter hat now. Welcome back to my page. Really appreciate you checking it out. Do have a look in the description for links to my Stephen King quiz book, my fiction, bunch of other stuff as well. But most of all, thank you for checking out this video. As you know already from the title and the intro, we've got another look at one of the adaptations coming up in this video, specifically the 2004 movie Secret Window, which starred Johnny Depp, Bello and Timothy Hutton, was directed by David Koepp, and was an adaptation of the novella Secret Garden, Secret Window, which appeared in 1990's 4 Past Midnight. And you can check out my 19 reasons to read that collection right here on this channel as well. Now, not gonna lie, this movie is something of a guilty pleasure of mine, as you'll see when we get into the reasons. But hey, we've all got stuff that we like, even though we know that objectively it's probably not that good. Just bear that in mind as we go into this video. Now, if you're worried about things that might spoil a first time watch of this movie, don't be. Anything that might do that, I will hide behind a spoiler alert, and at that point you can just skip ahead to the outro using the timestamp below, and you won't have anything spoiled for you that you don't want spoiled. Now, if you're looking to watch or re-watch Secret Window in the US, you can do it for free with ads on Pluto. In the UK, you have to buy or rent it, but it's available in a bunch of places, including right here on YouTube. Okay, let's deal with this dilemma. Let's settle who exactly wrote the story. Here are 19 reasons to watch Secret Window. So what's the headline reason to watch this? Simple really. In my opinion, it's a good movie. Sure, the twist and the progression is not the most original, but it's solid throughout. It's engrossing throughout. The acting's pretty decent, the direction's good, there's a cute dog. Like, if you want an effective thriller with some good scares to immerse yourself in for 90 minutes, this is genuinely a great choice. I also love that this film doesn't waste any time in getting on with things. Within 5 minutes, John Shooter's sinister character is knocking at the door of Mort Rainey, who is played by Johnny Depp, and he utters that famous line,
"You stole my story."
And he just oozes threat and menace while he's setting out what needs to happen and what he wants to see take place over the course of the movie. You're invested right from the start. No messing around. Bam, straight in. In fact, the storytelling throughout this is pretty tight. In the first 15 minutes alone, we learn that Johnny Depp's character has separated from his wife, who was having an affair. We learn that he is depressed. He's living in his lake house. He is smoking again. He's unable to have a coherent conversation with his housekeeper.
You're a good man, Mr. Rainey.
You too, Mrs. Garvey.
But most of all, we learn that he did once plagiarize someone else's work. You know, it would have been very easy for them to drip all of these elements in throughout the movie, but I really like that they just front load it all and give you everything you need to know right at the start. It comes out the blocks full speed and keeps that pace up pretty much all the way through. So what's the hook here? Well, it's pretty simple. We've got Mort Rainey, who is our depressed author, and he is woken from a nap one day by a knock on his door, faced with this guy John Shooter, who accuses Mort of plagiarism. And as I've just said, we soon learn that Mort did plagiarize somebody once. And John Shooter wants the situation to be resolved, and to show how far he's willing to go, he starts carrying out various acts of violence. And the rest of the movie is this race against time. How is Mort going to prove to John Shooter that this story was his, and how far will John Shooter actually go? So there's a style to this movie that is difficult to articulate, but is definitely there, and it's probably a combination of having Johnny Depp on screen most of the time and him being free to just be Johnny Depp, but also having David Koepp managing things behind the camera. Just taking, for example, the way the cabin looks, it's just really well decorated. The woods look great, the cabin looks excellent, and even things like the dream sequence, they just work. Like, even in that, you've got footage looking down onto the ocean. That's B-roll footage from the Lost World Jurassic Park. Now, I'm fully aware that a lot of people think this movie sucks. I am not one of them. I said it was a guilty pleasure, and I do like it every time I watch it. It's just something that I find I can vibe with. It's a movie you don't have to think too much about. You can just lose yourself in it, and it's a fun ride throughout. And where else would you have a scene where our main character goes to the police to report a crime, and the chief of police is sitting there doing cross-stitch while only half listening to him because the cross-stitch helps his arthritis. Like, I've not seen that anywhere else in cinema.
Needlepoint, can you believe it? Doc says it's good for the arthritis.
So let's talk about the cast in this one, starting with Johnny Depp, who drives this. The poster is literally his face. This came out at Pirates of the Caribbean peak time. You can see why this movie did probably better than it might deserve to have done. But the key here is that I think Johnny Depp was allowed to embrace his Johnny Deppness to good effect. He brings this quirky, unhinged level to the character of Mort Rainey that does get you questioning exactly what is going on here. And his performance is really enjoyable. He spends most of his time in his tatty dressing gown. He's got great hair. He's funny at times. He's on edge. He gets angry. And he just does a great job of being a sad boy eating crisps. Oh, and that mouth tick that Mort Rainey develops, all Johnny Depp's own creation. So John Turturro as John Shooter is also fantastic. He looks so calm and almost grandfatherly and very sweet and soft and not at all dangerous. And then he speaks and you realise he is incredibly dangerous, and any scene with him in is really tense throughout. Maria Bello as Amy, Mort's ex-wife, is pretty solid throughout. She does a good job of getting across how sad she is about everything and how conflicted she is about Mort. Nothing spectacular, but she's not really on screen enough to give a spectacular performance, but she is good throughout. Then we have Timothy Hutton as Amy's lover, Ted Milner. He's okay, but at times borders on just trying that little bit too hard, although he does do a good job of portraying a character who is a dick.
Oh man, listen, I apologized to you months ago.
We have Len Cariou as the cross-stitching sheriff, Dave Newsome, as well, and he's great also. They clearly start off this movie trying to take inspiration from the police chief in Misery and make him almost a bit of a comic relief character. But then as the story goes on, the character has to develop a bit more, and it works. His progression feels genuine. Lastly, before spoilers, again, don't necessarily believe the haters. This is an entertaining watch, honest. Okay, after this point, going to be talking about a few things that may ruin a first-time watch for you, so if you don't want that to happen, consider this your spoiler alert and use the timestamp in the description to jump ahead to the outro. Otherwise, stick around because I've got a few more reasons for you to watch Secret Window coming right up. So when it comes to differences from the book, there are a few. The one that most folk talk about is the ending. Now, if you've read the novella, you'll remember that, and this is a spoiler alert for the ending of the novella, so if you haven't read the novella, maybe jump ahead maybe a minute or so. But you remember from the novella, Ted and Amy survive, Mort dies, and we realise that it's like a supernatural thing, and that Mort's imagination has brought John Shooter to life. So it kind of was Mort doing everything, but it was also John Shooter. That's difficult to capture on screen, right? So the movie sort of flips things around a bit. We see very clearly that it's Mort all the time, and he kills Ted and Amy, and it's implied that he buries them out in his secret garden that you can look on from the secret window in his house. I like both endings, but the movie one is probably more satisfying and definitely works better on screen. The other big change for me was having Chico being switched from a cat in the novella, who gets killed, good thing, to a dog in the movie who gets killed. No, I don't like that. Now, there are a few fun scenes here. The bit where Ted tries to punch Mort, who dodges out of the way, and Ted ends up punching the car window. That does make me laugh every time.
Go back and tell that to your filthy little friend. Ah! God!
But my favourite has to be the big reveal of the twist. Even if you've seen it coming, which you probably will, you got to admit, it's pretty effective. As for my favourite line, well, it's John Shooter again, and it's this one, for absolute sure.
I will burn your life and every person in it like a cane field in a high wind.
So when it comes to links to other King adaptations, we've got a few here. Maria Bello would later go on to be in Big Driver. We've already seen Timothy Hutton in The Dark Half, of course, and Len Cariou would also appear in 1408 a few years after this. As for Easter eggs for other King works, well, spotted a couple. We've got Mort's cleaner taking that story out of the trash, which is Clearly a nod to the origin of Carrie, right?
Oh, I found one of your stories in the trash, Mr. Rainey. I thought you might want it, so I put it on the table.
Yeah, I see that, Mrs. Garvey.
We have John Shooter wearing a blue chambray shirt. And are we having it that the mouse in the shower is Mr. Jingles? Because I'm certainly saying it. So lastly, the very ending of this, and I've already touched on this, we get it sort of hinted, implied, that Mort has buried Amy and Ted out in his garden and he's growing the corn there, basically to just make it so that nobody can ever truly know what happened to them. And I like that. I like that it's just hinted, we don't see the full thing. There is actually an alternative ending to this where the camera keeps going into the earth and you see the two bodies buried under the corn. But like I say, I think just having it hinted at is far more effective, and definitely they picked the right ending to go out there on the theatrical cut. So there we go, 19 reasons to watch Secret Window. Let me know what you think of this one. Is this one you've seen before? Is this one you haven't watched for a while? How does it compare to the novella for you? Let me know in the comments, love to hear your thoughts. And also do check out the links in the description to my Stephen King quiz book. You'll find a quiz on this film and a quiz on 4 Past Midnight, amongst many other quizzes. You can find links to my fiction, podcast, my newsletter, a bunch of other stuff going on in there. But most of all, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you're not a subscriber already, consider doing that. And if you are, maybe tell a friend if you know anyone else who might be interested in some random guy from the middle of England talking about Stephen King every week. Because that's what they're going to get. As for this one, well, we're at the ending. And that's the only thing that really matters. The ending. And this one is perfect.